As we mentioned at the top of the program, President Trump taped an interview with CBS News before his White House session with reporters today. In one exchange, he talked about both the Confederate flag and the number of white people killed by the police as compared to black people.
President Trump, back in 2015, you said the Confederate battle flag belongs in a museum. Do you still believe that?
All I say is freedom of speech. It's very simple. My attitude is freedom of speech. Very strong views on the Confederate flag. With me, it's freedom of speech. Very simple. Like it, don't like it, it's freedom of speech.
Would you be comfortable with your supporters displaying the Confederate battle flag at political events?
You know, it depends on what your definition is, but I am comfortable with freedom of speech. It's very simple.
You understand why the flag is a painful symbol for many people because it's a reminder of slavery.
Well, people love it, and I know people that like the Confederate flag, and they're not thinking about slavery. I look at NASCAR. You go to NASCAR, you had those flags all over the place. They stopped it. I just think it's freedom of speech, whether it's Confederate flags or Black Lives Matter or anything else you want to talk about. It's freedom of speech.
Let's talk about George Floyd. You said George Floyd's death was a terrible thing.
Terrible.
Why are African Americans still dying at the hands of law enforcement in this country?
And so are white people. So are white people. What a terrible question to ask. So are white people. More white people, by the way. More white people.
Obviously, the second part of the president's answer deserves some context as far as police killings, according to a study published in 2018 by the American Journal of Public Health. Adjusted for population, black men are 3.5 times more likely to be killed by the police than white men. As you heard, the president displaying the Confederate flag as free speech. Perspective now from Bakari Sellers, CNN political analyst and author of My Vanishing Country, a new book, and David Axelrod, a former senior advisor to President Obama and a CNN senior political analyst. Bakari, when the President of the United States goes on national TV giving misleading information about police violence against black people in this country, making excuses for Confederate flags, I mean, I guess none of it is surprising.
None of it is surprising, but I mean, I think that the question we have to ask ourselves is how far have we come? And I think that's a question that the country literally has to sit back and ask themselves. How far have we come and where do we go from here? Those are two very simplistic questions, but when you hear the President of the United States and you hear his resolve to come down on the side and the legacy of white supremacy, I mean, the President is a white supremacist, you have to firmly believe that we have so far to go. And this is not new, and I don't want people to get outraged simply over the President's statement. He is hearkening back on a time of leadership like George Wallace, like Lester Maddox, like Bull Connor. He's going back to a time of Medgar Evers and Jimmy Lee Jackson and Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. And what the president doesn't understand is the history of this country. I firmly believe that the ignorance that the President of the United States displays and articulates day in and day out, it adds gasoline to the fire because his followers, there's 35% of the country that still adheres to absolutely everything he says. The president is a danger. He truly is a danger. And what people, and I firmly believe this, and people are going to chastise
Bakari,
me.
what if though?
Go ahead.
Bakari, what though if the president actually, he doesn't read history, but you said he doesn't understand the history. What if he does understand the history and he's doing it because he understands the history? I mean, that's also a possibility, isn't it? I mean, it's a sickening possibility.
Yeah, I don't give him that much credit. I mean, I believe the president to be racist. I believe the president to be a white supremacist. I do not believe that he is the architect of trying to espouse these racial ideologies and racial supremacist ideologies forward. I just think he's in this moment. He's using racism as a political currency. I think people around him, the Stephen Millers of the world, may be more like what you're talking about. But regardless, what I'm attempting to say is that this did not start with Donald Trump, and it's not going to end when he is rooted out of the White House. This is the underbelly of the United States of America, and this is something that we have to have a reckoning with, that we are having a reckoning with, and people have to understand that.
David, I mean, it certainly seems like the president understands this is the underbelly of America and is very happy to play into it and play with it for his own ends.
Listen, he's riding the horse that he rode in on. He became president of the United States by espousing these kinds of views. He's espoused them throughout his presidency. I disagree slightly with Bakari. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He's an opportunist, and he's exploiting race because he thinks it's to his political advantage to do that. I think he's badly misreading this moment and where I think the country has moved. The president has not. And if you look at polling, you see that overwhelming majority of Americans suggest that they feel he's off on this. They don't want to see the president of the United States pouring gasoline on the fire. And you can see it particularly in these suburban areas that he carried 4 years ago, where he's now losing by double digits. And this is part of the reason why people are uncomfortable with this tactic. But he believes that there is this, what he calls the silent majority, a term that we heard back 50 years ago, that support this kind of ideology, that support this sort of white supremacist rhetoric, and stand up for the Confederate flag, and that they will take him back to the White House. I'm sure he believes that.
I want to play something from Mary Trump's first interview that she spoke to ABC about the president. Let's listen.
April 2017, I'm going to end where I began.
Sure.
You see the president in the Oval Office, and you tell him, don't let them get you down. Did you mean that?
I did, actually. That was 4 months in. He already seemed very strained by the pressures. He'd never been in a situation before where he wasn't entirely protected from criticism or accountability or things like that. And I just remember thinking, he seems tired. He seems like this is not what he signed up for, if he even knows what he signed up for. And I thought his response was actually more enlightening than my statement. And he said, they won't get me. And so far, looks like he's right.
And if you're in the Oval Office today, what would you say to him?
Resign.
Boil it down. What's the single most important thing you think the country needs to know about your uncle?
He's utterly incapable of leading this country. And it's dangerous to allow him to do so.
Based on what you see now or what you saw then?
Based on what I've seen my entire adult life.
Bakari, I mean, it's quite a story, obviously. Does any of it matter? I mean, is all this baked in? Is everybody's mind made up?
No, I mean, I think that proves my point, though, Anderson. Like, we've known this. This is not anything new. It's not as if the president became racist yesterday. It's not as if he became incompetent, in 2019. This is the same person who rode down the escalators and called Mexicans rapists. I mean, this is the same person when I was in the studio playing footsie with David Duke. We know this to be true, and all I'm simply saying is that the United States of America, we deserve the president we have today, and we've never dealt with this issue. And so now we have to, and hopefully we can turn the page.
Yeah, very quickly, David Axelrod, do you think this matters? I mean, this book will have an impact in any way?
No, I think what matters is that 136,000 people have died and this virus is raging and he seems unresponsive to it. What matters is he seems to be pouring gasoline on the fire of race at a time when the country is having a reckoning about it. These things touch people's lives, and I think they're going to vote on what touches their lives, not on, I think long ago they've made a judgment about his character.
Correct.
Yeah, David Axelrod, Bakari Sellers, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.